Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois. You can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said, when you're moving out.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and that theme music means it's time for our weekly conversation with Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. But first, President Trump yesterday from the Oval Office debating openly whether or not he will indeed green light the National Guard deployment to Chicago to aid with keeping the peace. Because, you know, he does these big cities and their political hacks a solid, and he just gets flack for it.
I was telling some of the people that in a certain way, you really want to be asked to go. You know, I hate to barge in on a city and then be treated horribly by corrupt politicians and bad politicians like a guy like Pritzker. He ought to spend more time in the gym, actually. This guy is a disaster. I don't know, they have a political thing about it. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. But I don't like going to a town, a city, place, a state, and then be criticized by some corrupt or incompetent governor where crime is rampant.
Nobody wants to see Pritzker in the gym more because nobody wants to see that body in spandex or short shorts, Mr. President. But he continued offering more commentary.
You have people I watched in Illinois. Chicago, Illinois is a disaster. I have property there. It's a disaster what's going on in Chicago. And you get Pritzker, he's violating our rights. I think this is another men and women's sports thing. I think this is one of those, you know, they call them 80-20 issues. I call them 97-3. I think the Democrats better get smart. And, you know, politically, I hope they don't. But actually, in terms of love for the country, I hope they do, because it will be good to work together. So I'm thinking about, you know, when I have some slob like Pritzker criticizing us before we even go there, I made the statement that next should be Chicago, because as you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick. But I'm really saying, and I say this to all of you, in a certain way, we should wait to be asked, because they have cities that are so under control, you know, out of control.
I found this comment, too, from the Civic Committee President, Derek Douglas, to be interesting. So here's a erstwhile business leader opining on the topic, folding in with the state as the rent-seeking Chicago business leadership, in leadership in scare quotes, is wont to do. Part of the problem. They talk about authoritarianism, they whine about authoritarianism ad nauseum, and then you look around at this state, and it is the closest thing to a society that has completely folded into its own government in the country. The ironies abound. Civic Committee President Derek Douglas on the possibility of deploying the National Guard. It will impact businesses' bottom lines and ability to operate efficiently. It will impact tourism and employees getting to their jobs. What? What are you talking about? It will impact businesses' bottom lines and ability to operate efficiently. It will impact tourism and employees getting to their jobs. You know what impacts tourism? Chicago's reputation as a killing field, as the president just said. Does that impact tourism? Does that impact people's bottom lines? Does the complete catastrophic management of the city of Chicago under BLM Brandon and Triple Threat before him and Tiny Dancer before her and so forth, does that impact businesses' bottom lines and ability to operate efficiently, impact tourism, employees getting to their jobs? How about the lawlessness on that midnight mystery train called the CTA? I should say murder mystery train. I'm thinking of conflating that Brad Cooper movie, Midnight Meat Train. Anyway, I mean, this is how feeble, how limp the business community is in the city. So where does the opposition come from, you ask rhetorically, because the answer we all know is nowhere. So it rolls on. And people continue to get rolled over. Ted Dabrowski, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan.
So you're contemplating a run for governor, as we've discussed on this show. What would your response to Trump and or Pritzker be?
Well, I think Trump has it right in that we have an emergency in Chicago. Pritzker and everybody before him, and Lightfoot and Johnson and before them, they've all normalized this murder and this crime, and especially in west and south sides. Of course, it spread in the recent years to more than that, but they've normalized it. And so when we see our murders go down a little bit this year, suddenly it's all okay. And Trump is doing something that's different from what anybody's done, and I think you touched on it a few days ago. He doesn't care if crime's lower. What he cares about is whether we have safe cities. And that's a really novel thought. To have a Chicago that's safe. It's novel to think of a parent who can let their kids go outside and not get murdered. And we forget about that. Look, I've been privileged to live in safe places. I live in a safe place now, but I couldn't imagine having to think about whether my kid goes outside and he might not come back tomorrow or the same day because he gets shot, or he gets or he doesn't have to get shot, right? He can get abused, he can get hurt, and we've forgotten about that. So Trump is opening up our minds to that, and something like the National Guard, it's controversial, but you know what? It would send a signal that we finally care, like we care about those people too, not just the loop, and I just think that. Of course, it'll get litigated if he does something, but it is an emergency. And I think, I've tracked these numbers for a long time. I looked at the Chicago numbers compared to New York's and the other big cities. We're the extreme national outlier for murders. We're the extreme national outliers for crime. And, it's a pity because, guys like Johnson and Pritzker have made it worse with with the Safety Act, getting rid of bail, getting rid of ShotSpotter, any chase of bad guys, foot chases, car chases. We've decarcerated. We've got horrible people who have just let murderous people get back on the streets. It's a disaster. So we should listen to Trump, and we should be motivated to actually attack the problems by unwinding all the bad things that largely Democrats have done over the last 100 years in Chicago.
A new study led by Northwestern University researchers looked at 7,000 pediatric gun injuries in the states of Florida, Maryland, New York, and Wisconsin over a 5-year period between 2016 and 2021. 7,000 pediatric gun injuries, Florida, Maryland, New York, Wisconsin, 5 years, 2016 to 2021. Children who live in what were described or categorized for the purposes of this research, children who live in low opportunity neighborhoods are up to 20 times more likely to be shot than those living in high opportunity areas. That, sort of follows logically from what we've all borne witness to over so many decades in Chicago. Yeah, the west and south sides are a lot safer for kids, a lot less safe for kids than, Lincoln Park, the Gold Coast, Streeterville, right? Yeah, we get this. But if that's true, then I mean, how do you like it? How is that not an emergency? I mean, it's been an emergency for a long time. It's just never been categorized. 20 times. You're for the downtrodden. You're for the little guy. You're for people that are trying to make ends meet and playing by the rules. Meanwhile, they're trapped in neighborhoods where their kids are 20 times, according to Northwestern University researchers, 20 times more likely to be shot than kids a few miles away in Streeterville or Lincoln Park. And your answer to that is what? What answer could they possibly give?
Well, that's precisely the point, and I think that's why he's right. It's an emergency, and if you could imagine if we had those kind of murder numbers and crime numbers move into the North Shore of Chicago, tomorrow that would be an emergency. It's just not an emergency where it's happening now because nobody cares, and I think that's a real disqualifying what do you want to call it characteristic for Pritzker, for Johnson, because they're not fighting for the little guy. They're not fighting for their people, right? I don't know who, like you said, I don't know who Pritzker's their people are, but he's certainly not defending his own people. He's politicizing the Trump thing, of course, for political points, but he's not going to do the right thing, and that's what's wrong. And the only reason Trump wants to come here is because these guys, Pritzker and Johnson, have made things worse. They are apologists for the crime. They're apologists for the criminals, and that has to change. And of course, that's why they shouldn't be in office.
Right, and it's funny too, because thinking about this at the state versus local level, the state and Pritzker and BLM Brandon, they're joined at the hip on this. They're a tandem, they're a team. And so is everybody else at the podium yesterday, having their turn to decry Trump. Well, what about state level resources being applied to Chicago, which is something that has occurred previously?
Right. Well, so this is an important point, and I want to cover this because I'm sure that the critics of this will say, well, the National Guard's not going to solve the problem. Well, it won't solve the long-term problem. This is a signaling short-term that, hey, we care about you and your communities. But back to what Corey Brooks said, and also what Bob Woodson said, whatever it was last week or 2 weeks ago. You got to solve the problem, and here's the other big issue that's behind this is that we don't have an economy that grows anymore. And so people in the South and West sides don't get to participate in a growing economy. Chicago, among the 15 largest cities in the country, has got the worst growth since Pritzker took office. Minimal growth. You got Phoenix and Miami growing 4 and 5 times faster than Chicago. So you've got to solve the problem by eventually bringing economic growth and prosperity and opportunity to these communities. Otherwise, right, we can bring in the National Guard, but it doesn't solve the problem. You got to really solve the problem by bringing in growth and investment and some opportunity and some hope. We got to bring hope.
Yeah, it's something I would expect the president of the Civic Committee to say, rather than giving some bull jive, mealy-mouthed nonsense about the National Guard interrupting people's commute to work.
Oh,
what the hell is wrong with these people? Well,
that was if he knew something, and if Derek Douglas knew something about his own economy that he purports to support, he would know that we're at the bottom of the barrel. And this whole National Guard comment and impacting the economy, forget that. It's the horrific policies we have on spending. We spend much more than we ever take in. We keep raising taxes, and we're hurting everybody all the time, except for the wealthy. They can take care of themselves. We know that, or they can move. But everyday Illinois are just getting slugged.
Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Dan.
And he joined us in the Turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At Air Right Heating and Cooling, we know there's never a good time to be without AC in Chicagoland. If you can't remember the last time your AC was inspected, don't wait for it to fail during a heat wave. Get peace of mind by having Air Right take a look. Plus, AM 560 listeners get $56 off any service. Visit Air Right Heating and Cooling today at air-right.com. That's AIR-RITE.com. Air Right Heating and Cooling. Doing it right since 1959.
You know what really keeps me up at night? It's the criminals feel more and more bold. They have no fear of any consequences because there are none. So I did what anyone with a family should do. I called Goldilocks. They're not just some cookie-cutter security company. Goldilocks has been protecting Chicagoland homes and businesses for